And with me today, you have a special treat in order for you. This man is none other than a community evangelist over at AvidXchange. He is known by so many titles, from professor to doctor to evangelist. The list goes on and on. None other than Chris Elmore. Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. You didn't put dad in there. Now that I have to homeschool.
Anyone who is a dad of any kind in the last couple weeks is a different, new, more engaged dad than they've ever been before. Start there. Tell me what we were talking before the show here. Your world has been very busy, very hectic. Your company has been going through all kinds of growth. You haven't got to spend this amount of time at home. What's your observation there?
Well, I was telling you that I haven't. I was talking to my wife last night, and I said I haven't spent 3 weeks in a row at home in 18 years, really. And it's been a big adjustment. You know, at AvidXchange, I do a lot of the events, and I had a really good book of April business and a really good book of May business, and you know, it's all gone. So it's a matter of, you know, I got to tell you, I'll tell the Facebook Live folks. I'll be very honest here. You know, if I'm not consistently working or doing stuff that I feel is productive and important, then I start to get guilty and I start to get anxious. So I had that last week. I had a lot of guilt. I had a lot of anxiety. But I'm just going to go right to pivot. I want to see what you think about this. And the pivot that I did was I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double down and start looking at all of those conversations I would have had at the office. And I started putting those on my calendar to have one-on-one in meetings like this. And so those cranked up this week, and good things are happening. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
What have you been doing? Can I interview the host?
Yeah, please. No, I mean, I feel the same way, where I felt like the last 2 weeks before this week, it was a lot of setting the foundation for a new way to work. And it's not like we've worked remotely before. It's that's not like it's a new thing. It's just like, it's complete, it's absolute in its kind of enveloping your day. So I was really trying to set the foundation for how can our organization be more effective, kind of reshift gears and shuffle priorities. I'm sure you're going through the same thing. And I feel like we're starting to hit the ground in more execution than planning mode this week, which is great. But I feel like I'm actually getting more done probably than I have before, because you take all that time of like having conversations with people and moving from one meeting to the next physically, or buildings around town. I mean, you lose a lot of time. So that's great. Here's the question I really want your opinion on, and you to tell the audience. We're in a period where a lot of people say the world's changing before our eyes, and they see it. I think there's a large amount of people that are looking at this and saying, let's weather the storm. In a couple weeks, or maybe at worst a couple months, you know, we'll be back to normal. I think there's others that feel like we're witnessing a change forever, that we'll look back and say, this was a moment. Where do you fall on that? And what do you think those drivers are?
Well, first, I want to point out something that I think is natural. First is that when you're in the middle of something scary, your inclination is to do nothing. It's just to freeze for a moment. And that's why I like the organizations that I work with. Is not one of those organizations, from AvidXchange to UNCC to Queens, not one of those organizations froze. Everyone jumped into action. I was really excited about that. And then now that we're in the action, you know, in the middle of changing it. So to answer your question, I have a tendency to ramble. I think that's why you asked me to do this. Was this 45 minutes?
It's 30, 3 hours, whatever you want.
I mean, what's the Facebook Live record? No,
I don't know. We'll find out.
So here's what I think, and I can't tell if I hope this to be true or I believe this is going to be true, but our work lives are going to be changed forever. And here's where I think that they're going to be changed. And I'm just going to talk from just personal. And my personal, whatever it is, says that I will never take for granted you and I sitting down and having a cup of coffee like we've done in the past. I will never take that for granted ever again. And I'm excited about us getting back into society and just leveraging the heck out of that. And, you know, going to see a concert or going to a meetup event, you know, and going to breakfast somewhere with someone. I'm never going to take those things for granted ever again. You know, because I just miss being around people and sharing ideas. Now we're still doing it, and I don't think we're losing too much of that. But I'll never take. I think for the rest of my work life, I'm never going to take for granted you and I sitting down and having a conversation
So
ever
that's a
again.
really, really interesting point. And I think people who live through, you know, impactful times take things for granted less. So I love that. One side of the
Yeah,
coin, at some point we're going to get back to some semblance of normalcy where we're
yeah,
allowed to leave the house. And at least for a while, maybe I'm a little critical overly of that, where I say we always end up taking things for granted as time
yep,
passes. But I
yep,
think for a good chunk of time, at least, and for some of us forever, we will appreciate those things that maybe we didn't think about as much. But on the other side of that coin, tell me about your view of, like, I believe, and I've said this time and time again for the last couple of weeks, that the companies, the individuals that right now act with a sense of urgency and say, I'm not just going to duck my head down and wait till this storm passes and then go back to normal life and hope my business survives or whatever it is. I'm going to move fast now. I'm going to figure
yeah,
out how to capitalize on this opportunity to both improve and keep my business going and to help our community as it goes through a really tough time. I think those that go out and proactively do that, they're going to benefit because they're not going to have to just weather the storm and get back out. But I also think that the world is going to change. And
yeah,
those models that people before are sitting around right now and they're all of a sudden maybe ordering things that they would have physically bought before, or they're figuring out how to watch a concert or watch a comedy show or get engaged with a play date with some friends with their kids. Like, they're learning new skills and new
yeah.
innovations are coming out that's going to change that forever. So, I mean, what's your take on that other flip side of, like, the things that just won't come back?
Well, you know, as an entrepreneur and someone that's been kind of around you know, startups my whole career, you know, AvidXchange is just an anomaly because it grew so fast. Um, the here's the negative side. Let's call it the negative side. Um, anybody that lives check to check is going to be hurt for the foreseeable future, and that's the individual employees that you know, just go check to check and just can't make it past after one check. But then here's the other thing to think about is we're going to see those retail establishments. We're going to see those retail establishments that live check to check, and if you think that's going to be kind of the mom and pop in downtown Kannapolis or whatever, or Lincolnton, I should talk about someplace that I know. Um, you know, those might not be the ones, because I've always had this thing about, you know, it's not the money you make, it's the money you save. And this is going to be one of those times that we're going to know within a couple of weeks who's living from check to check. And I'm not talking personal, I'm talking businesses. I had a conversation with a professor friend of mine, and he says that there's been some rumblings about, you know, public companies needing 12 months of cash on their balance sheet to weather something like this. You know, that to me that sounds a little bit extreme, because it's going to stop businesses from taking leaps and making investments. I think we're going to see a very conservative strain of cash management come out of this, because it's just one of those things you could have never planned for it. And so anyone that's living check to check, company that's living check to check, I think we're going to find out who those folks are pretty quickly. And I feel horrible for them.
Oh, we keep hearing the stories every day. It's brutal in what they're going through. And again, you know, I think either whether it's the fintech hub or it's the city or the state or the feds or whoever, right? I think, you know, we're doing our best to say, here are the resources. Here's what's coming out of the CARES Act. Here's what the banks are going to be able to do for you for, you know, liquidity. But it's also, I think, an element of snapping them into the realization that if you just try to duck and hide this thing out and wait it
Yeah.
out, I mean, that's going to be not necessarily a recipe for success from a company perspective. So the startup stories are just brutal, and the small business stories are brutal. We're doing everything we can. I'm just curious from your perspective, the people you're surrounded by every day and the people in the community that you continue to talk to, how has this changed, technologists, developers, evangelists? How has it changed the way that are, on the whole, are they more or less productive now? And what is the disconnection between humanity and human touch done?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this because you used my trigger word. Did you know you triggered me? And that's productivity. I think I think, by the way, I think this is going to be true, but I hope hopefully it's going to hit someone in the right way, is that our definition of productivity needs to change. Now, I always believe that it needs to change, and I tell people that no one's going to win an award for staring at their computer the longest. It's in some of my entrepreneurial friends that I talk with, like you said, on a daily basis, the thing they're struggling with is, now that I've dispersed my people to their house, how do I know they're going to be productive? And I was going out to grab something from Walmart, or what we call the virus epicenter of Clover, South Carolina, and with my gloves on and my mask on, and I drove by my neighborhood, and there was a guy outside pressure washing his driveway, and I was thinking, I wonder if his employer knows what he's doing right now. So there's a for an employer, especially in a startup situation, when we don't see our folks, we're going to have to redefine what does it mean to be productive. Now, I'm a big fan of that. Now, you know me, I'm always kind of been on the sales side, so it's pretty easy. How many demos have you had? How many conversations have you had? How much money have you brought in? It's pretty easy. But then how do you do that with a service person or a programmer or a developer? So I think we're going to redefine based on its outcomes. And I would highly recommend that people think about, well, what's the outcomes and what is it that needs to happen in what time frame, and then make that the judgment of productivity.
Final question for you. You are always a guy who strikes me and many others around this community as a deep thinker, someone who has deep beliefs and passions that everyone really loves to hear. So here's your final question. In this new world, as we're moving forward, if you think about the word work-life balance, what does that mean to you? And what is your one tip or guide point for anyone out there as it relates to what's your kind of work and then personal life mantra or balance, so you're maximizing both of them in this unique time where we're at home?
Yeah, and I'm a crier, so I could cry now in just a minute. But I think that what's gonna permeate through both work life is going to be kindness. And I really believe that. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine brought by a roll of 4-pack of toilet paper. And she just wanted us to have it because, the toilet paper is the cigarettes of the prison system nowadays. And it was that little bit of kindness that really struck me. And, we're gonna start to hear stories coming out of our workday life where someone did this for someone else. And so for me, it's going to be following those nice little strains of kindness. And whether this is a deep thought or anything, I don't know how deep this thought is, but I got to tell you, I'm going to double down on this notion that, a little bit of kindness, especially in a really turbulent time, goes a long freaking way.
Man, that is a wonderful sentiment to leave us on. Chris Elmore, community evangelist. Everyone loves you, and now they got to have their quick 10-minute fix of Elmoreisms today. Thank you so much, buddy, for your time. Thanks for joining the Fintech Moshpit. We appreciate you greatly, and we'll be talking more later.